Okay, in this one we're just going to have a look at the code which we wrote in the last recording, and I just want to remove some of the noise. We're going to have a look at the comments, see if we think that they are necessary. If they are necessary, we'll keep them. If they're not necessary, we'll get rid of them. Choose high definition for the best viewing experience, and if you'd like to join a growing group of software developers and take your skills to a new level, all you need to do is subscribe, click the little notification icon, and welcome. And I think this is an important step because it removes some of the noise in your code. Also, comments can go stale, they can be out of date, and they can also be either incorrect or irrelevant. And I'll show you an example of that in our code, because developers can get in the habit of cutting and pasting parts of code into other methods, which I did in one of my tests. And some of the comments that go with that might not be relevant, and I actually did do that. Stuff like this. Do we actually need all these comments here? If you use good names, if you use good variable names, if you use good method names, if your constants are easily understood, if you can look at them and have a good idea of what that means, then all this stuff, it really shouldn't be necessary. Another thing is that PHP I think it's becoming better and better, and you can actually get away with not using hardly any comments at all now, because it's become almost self-documenting. If you think about your input parameters for your methods, you can now do like unions, so you can say this can be a string or it can be null, and so you don't need to have doc blocks for everything where you're saying your params are string or null. It documents itself, and so the way I'm going to create this project is I'm going to try and get away with using as few comments as possible. Obviously, I'm not going to use no comments, because comments are still valid in areas where you think it might be an idea to just leave a message for another developer to let them know what this method does, why it should be used. But in the main, we're going to try and use self-documenting code. Okay, so that's the intro out of the way. Let's start working our way through this. We'll go back and we'll just take our time and we'll work through the test. Now, in my tests, I do like to know at what stage we're in. We're only ever going to be in one of three stages. You're either going to be doing the setup, doing the something, or the something, as I've called this, so we'll correct our spelling mistake, or making assertions. And so you can't be in any other stage than that. You'll either be setting up, executing, or making assertions, i.e. checking that your system is working the way it should do. And so I don't think these comments are needed here. Create a session object. It's quite obvious what you're doing there. Session equals new session. So I put the comments in there to guide me before I've written any code. So that's perfectly fine. And I'll do that a lot, but afterwards, don't leave your trash hanging around. Go back, clean up, keep your code lean and mean, minimum noise. This one here, assert session is not started. If you recall, I actually pasted it. When I went to copy this line here, I actually copied both lines inadvertently. And so this isn't even correct, because I'm not asserting that the session is not started. I'm asserting that the session is started. And so, as a developer, when I go and work on another project and I see stuff like this, if it's like your first day or your first couple of days on the project, you're looking at this thinking, oh my God, what have I got myself into here? Who are these cowboys? Stuff like this, you've really got to get rid of it, because it's misleading, amongst other things. Okay, so I think that's good for our test. All we need to know is at what stage we're in. We're either setting up, we're either doing something, or either making our assertions. So I think we can leave that there. All very easy to read. It's all obvious what's happening in the code and what assertions we're making. So let's go and have a look at our session class. So I wrote quite a lot of comments in here, but they were written to guide us, not to stay there as like to tell other developers what's happening. And so this is fairly obvious to me what is happening. If this is started, just return true. Okay, we're in a method called start. We could put a comment in here to say this starts the session. However, the class is called session and the method is called start. I think any developer with a tiny bit of experience is gonna, unless it does something other than that, in which case it'd be a stupid name anyway, but any developer with any amount of experience will have a good idea what this method does. Okay, so I don't think we need to add any comments to the top. What we will do is we'll say that we are returning a Boolean, and because we've put the return type declaration there, it means I don't think I need a doc block for this at all, so I'm just going to leave it out. Controversial among some of you maybe, but that's the way I roll. So this one here is started. If it's started, return true. We can get rid of that. That's quite clear what that one does. And if we look at the actual names of our functions and our constants here, this is very easy to read. If session status equals PHP session active, do we have an active session, in other words? In which case, just set the isStarted property to true and return true. We don't need the comments here because the comments only mirror what the code is doing anyway. So that can go. Good stuff. And then our third condition, simply start a session, set isStarted to true and return true. So we definitely don't need those. And if we look at our code now, it's nice and clean. I think it's pretty easy to know what's going on. Looking at the method here, you could read that in your code somewhere else in the client code and have a good idea what is happening if it's being called on an object called session, and the rest of our code is free of noise and free of comments. And so we've not added any new code there, but I think it's been a valuable recording to make and valuable changes or removals of comments to make, and we can now start working on our other stuff. And so what we'll do in the next one is we'll actually start adding data to the session. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like YouTube to show you more of my content, all you need to do is subscribe and click the little notification icon. I release new recordings every few days. Details of my schedule can be found on the community tab of my YouTube channel homepage.